Yeah, me too. I got that nice loading screen though. Seneca Development's probably my favorite of the original 4 HQ loading screens.
That one is really fun, but I have a soft spot for the robots with the crazy bunnies. Oh wait, no, I did not set myself to.
Oh,
I
good.
did set everyone to observer. Huh. Okay, weird. So it was.
So everything's fine.
Yeah, it was just.
All right. This is a refreshing breeze of a map after the last one.
Oh yes, I'm wondering if it's a map I helped play test. Trying to remember. Kind of looks a little bit like one.
I'm definitely thinking that spot just a little bit to the west of the colony with the silicon, the water, and the iron, and a little bit of aluminum. There's way more to the north. That is the spot to fight for. And every HQ would be successful enough there, except for maybe a scavenger.
For sure, but there are very reasonable spots otherwise on the map, and you don't need to rush towards it. Also, by the way, this is the round 3 and stuff.
Oh, goodness.
Intro,
Yes.
whatever.
Wait.
Errands.
Welcome to game number 3 of our free-for-all new players tournament, Newcomers tournament.
We're so good at this.
Yes.
An expansive
Here we will be
HQ has been
seeing
founded.
Scooby-Doo 2, Z-Ratchet, Squall, and Studico, who, and I promise, I did not get any of those names right.
I think it's Racket, Swakole, and I'm assuming Sudoku, like Sudoku with a T? Something.
Yeah, Studoku.
A
That makes
scientific
sense.
HQ has been upgraded.
Anyway, so Racket is the last to found. Founding an expansive, I think it's a very reasonable spot. So Silicon is fine. Everything's within reach. You have carbon by the base, you have iron by the base. The only thing I don't really like, actually
Yeah.
no, iron is steel is half price, so this is a very reasonable find.
An
Yes,
expansive
it's very
HQ
reasonable
has been
as far as
upgraded.
resources go. It looks like there's more room to the north than there really is, which is something newer players can sometimes have trouble with. There's just this one set of tiles above his HQ that he can actually access. When you're an expansive and there's EMPs on the map, it is so painful to not actually be able to grow your base.
And that is a very fair point, especially because EMPs are available. Well,
Yes.
actually, frankly, either EMPs or power surges are going to be really painful.
Yup, especially in a crater. You know, with power surges, not under these circumstances, but from time to time, even in craters, you can kinda keep things separate. But this is just, he's only got access to the lower 2/3 of that crater to work with. It's just not gonna work.
So Sudoku is a scientist, the one spot that we talked about.
Yeah,
Got good iron, got tons of water around, got some
everything you can want.
silicon. Yeah. Basically, actually, all of these founds have everything they want in very close proximity.
Yeah,
Or most of the stuff they want, anyway. The Nomad is the first to hit level 3.
yeah. Well, that's
Glass is good.
glass is
Life
good.
support is getting really good. Power is getting absolutely nuts
It's
already.
New Seattle, you know what that means.
It's a powerful place.
Yeah.
A rather
A
powerless
scientific
place.
HQ has been upgraded.
Power. And also, yes, scientists moving into steel mills and electrolysis reactors. That's a solid 1.5 power consumed by just 5 tiles.
So this is something that, as a newer player, you might not be aware of. This colony, not only does it consume things, which you can kind of see if you're on my Twitch with my mouse is over it, but more importantly, each colony that has a city name, you know, and they all do, has a theme. You know, there's a gimmick, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to get, say, offices from New Seattle, but New Seattle starts with offices, and it's more likely, at least I'm pretty sure, that New Seattle is going to select offices as when it decides to expand, put down new habitats, put down new offices, workplaces, etc.
Yes. And it also has one, like, generally the colonies consume one of, like, each colony module other than habitat consumes one resource on Mars. Which you can see now it spawned a warehouse which consumes glass. Laboratories take chemicals and offices consume power. And with American colonies, they do not spawn modules that consume electronics.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, and it's the same for each other colonies, that it prioritizes one resource and completely avoids one other.
See, you learn something new every day. I thought it was entirely just about consumption. I did not know that there was a no-go. This thing. Module's the word.
Meanwhile, people haven't been upgrading that much. The scientist got the upgrade, moves into that amazing life support.
Yep.
Has to move into power, sadly. You would want to have those triangles for all in the cache, but you really need power, otherwise you're dead. Because power is out of hand completely.
So look at this. The elite is the one amongst the scientists to decide he needs the goon to defend, and he defends his single electrolysis reactor. Really, the scientist is the one who should be using those goon squads, because they know this life support's gonna be contested, and contested hotly by anybody who's not the elite, and so isn't suffering from being EMP'd whenever you hit this life support.
See, you might think that, but the thing is that this game, and the way it's going, one big deal is going to be power.
Yes.
I couldn't care less about the life support. All I want, well, I mean, it's still a good freeze, I guess.
Well, the person who did it was the person who's making power money. You know, so you're exactly right. Power is where it's at right now. Power is the way you go from a spot that's, yeah.
This is the kind of game where if Blues is playing, you know that he's just going to get superconductor real quick, build like 3 solar panels and win the game by Sol 5.
Yep, and that's the kind of thing that you could come up with when you are making that kind of an income. At $1,000 a second, it's very difficult for a good player to not find a way to throw that into an advanced building and start winning the game.
And that's what Swakol is doing.
Yeah. Or at least in this case, he's making a ton of power money and doing whatever he wants at the auction.
Congratulations.
Now, I don't really like that at all, because he essentially just paid $28,000 in cash for this claim, because now he has to repay the debt with his power money, and he's not progressing
That
quite
said,
as quickly.
there's a definite benefit to making enough power money that something that's $40,000 for another player is 40 seconds to you. I mean, at the end of the day,
I mean,
An expansive
it's more a
HQ
sign
has
of
been
just how far
upgraded.
ahead they're becoming compared to everyone else. And look, we have HQ 2, 3, 4, 5. It's harmony and beauty.
it would be if Studico was above Squally.
Yeah, that's the only problem.
It's like when
But
you're
yeah,
playing cards with your grandma and you have to spend all your time getting them in exact correct order instead of playing the game.
I want to talk about the elite here.
Yeah, let's talk about the elite. All right.
So,
I'm not laughing at you, elite. I'm laughing at the fact that Squally is running away from this game. Just to be clear, just to be clear, like that is.
he's not running away. He's not running away with this game. He's running away from this game.
He's running towards his next one very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, about the elite. So, the found was kind of almost reasonable. Unfortunately, it came after the scientist, so the iron was already taken. So it was a little bit awkward. Going into the double silicon at the start was a little bit of an overkill. Because you don't need that much silicon as an elite. You don't need more silicon than an expansive would need aluminium, essentially. And a single mine/core is usually enough to handle your early upgrade
Moving
needs
out of that glass kiln and into silicon, though, is what he needs to be doing yesterday. If he
at this
wants to do
point.
stuff. Yes, right now. Just for right now, because it's a difference of negative $74 and $296. And that could
With adjacency, which would become something about
right,
400s. So.
right.
Also, they're sitting on 900, so actually that's not a real price even. Yeah, so
New building is
they're
available
definitely
for
committing
auction.
the sin of having buildings that don't benefit from adjacency at all.
Yep.
And part of the problem is, of course, they are on HQ
Sold.
level 2, so they don't have the steel to upgrade, which they're not making, which they could be making now that they have iron coming
You,
in.
you know what they've got enough money to do? Return their claims.
They could do that, but what do you even return? You kind of need that iron mine in the long term. Although
You
I guess you
know,
could return it in the short
right.
term. That's
So
about
the
it.
big problem is he decided he wanted to goon that electrolysis reactor first thing, because you can't return a claim with a goon on it. Which I think maybe you should be able to pay a little more, get the goon back, something. But whatever. The problem is, now he's stuck with a tile that doesn't have water. So I would just point to that electrolysis reactor and say, oh, we'll return that, put it on water, and at minimum, it's doing something for you. But as is, there is nothing. You are correct, there is absolutely nothing. Maybe that wind turbine, maybe? And try and get some steel up?
Maybe.
You've got 500 iron.
Here's the thing: you don't really need to like that. You don't need to reclaim that electrolysis reactor. It's just going to be a place where you're going to have some of your secondary sources. Like you can make steel there. You can build another reactor next to it and make more
Yes,
fuel
you can't.
or better transition to food at this point. Or sell down that glass and get the steel that you need to upgrade. It doesn't cost all that much.
That's true. I guess we finally found a situation that return a claim can't fix.
Yeah, it's more to do with just buildings that don't benefit from adjacency.
Which he's got two glass kilns now.
Yeah, sure. That's really good.
One of them's not working.
But the other problem is that, yeah, it's not working because you have no cash, because you're sitting on resources, and sometimes you need to have that cash. You need to be able to purchase that oxygen so that your glass kilns keep working and making more money.
So, as players get better at the game, they start realizing, as I may have mentioned in a prior game, that you want to sell at the top of a price point. You want to let that price increase if there's demand for it, and that's how you make money. A big problem is sometimes players get so wrapped up in that
Building is available for auction.
they don't realize that they're at the top, and that any more time wasted is just giving your opponents time to transition, and now it's just time to actually bank that money, claim it, and start thinking about late game strategy or just winning if you've got enough.
This is true, and an important thing here is that glass is probably going to keep coming up in price, at least somewhat. And sure, you are sitting on that glass, and you can sell it for even more if you upgrade later.
An
but
expansive
you're
HQ
wasting
has been
time.
Who's
upgraded.
about
That
to
is
win the
another
game?
very, very important resource in this game, which is time.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah,
The thing about time is you can only ever buy more of it. You can't ever stop your opponent. You can only ever give yourself another, minute and a half to 10 minutes tops.
yeah, you can slow them down a little bit, but it's never going to be. You cannot freeze time, essentially.
Yes, that would be the issue. You can in single player, though.
Yeah, but not in competitive multiplayer.
Nope, not in tournaments, especially.
And we have been ignoring Racket a little bit, but I'm noticing, based on how transitions have been happening, that they also are committing the crime of black magic tiles and not running their buildings not building efficiently, essentially, with adjacency bonuses.
I think Racket's big problem was not seeing the power colony. I think that had he figured out a way to service it, maybe go for a crazy carbon play into some wind turbines over to his southeast, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I think it all connects up though, is that they went for these single tiles that are covering debt, but not actually producing, not actually pumping out cash,
And there goes our
or
lead.
aggressively covering any markets.
A little surprised, though actually no, it makes perfect sense. Studico went into him. Thought
Well,
Scully
it's
had,
only
yeah.
at this point it's only going to make the game quicker, essentially, because now Swakol is going to buy up Studico, and
New land is
there
available for
goes
option.
2 players rather than 1.
Yep. Not
And
being
at
able to
this
defend
point,
yourself is definitely Racket's death knell. You know, regardless of anything else happening in the game, just the fact that whoever cleans this up, it's going to be Swakoli, is going to be the person who is dropping black market on them. And there's not going to be a way for them to deal with that.
yeah, at some point in a game you kind of have to realize
Sold.
that it's over,
Yeah.
which kind of painful to say, but unfortunately that is often the case. And in a case like this, in a tournament setting, when
Can't concede.
yeah, you cannot concede, but you do not want to speed the game up because time is a tiebreaker.
Right.
So you want to prolong the game anyway. You want to fight back with everything you've got to
So what
just
Racket wants to
try to live
do
longer.
is just pay $200,000 in debt right now. And that's the only way they can really affect this game.
Yeah, I mean they can still buy stock in Swakol. Just raise their price a little bit up, although that basically means that the game is over as soon as they're bought out. Because
This is, yeah. We've reached the point now where they can't even buy stock in other players, so.
yeah, so now you repay debt, and
Yep.
it's unfortunate that is happening, but yeah, they were a little bit too far behind. A little bit, the power kind of screwed them over in that.
Well, I
They
mean,
went for, well, no, what happened is they went for the
An
somewhat
expansive
typical
HQ has been
scientist
upgraded.
path, where they go for life support first, and life support was amazing. It's still actually just insanely through the roof.
no, they're not doing bad.
But, yeah, but then power went up, and they had to commit a claim to the geothermal plant. And so they could not, they only had 2 reactors and 2 farms, which is a little bit insufficient.
And we've talked about
Don't
it, you
have
know.
3 of a single one. Yeah.
Go into the better industry, even if it's a toin cost, still just put everything you've got into the one if you've only got 4 claims to commit, because you're not doing enough with 2 and 2.
Yeah, and that kind of was a big problem because they missed out on that power market, and that's what let the Nomad run away with the game. Essentially, it's basically the only thing that's truly worth talking about here, and the only thing that Swakol did better than everyone else. They recognize that power is insane, and they can produce a ton of it, and they can make a lot of cash, and they can run away with the game with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's essentially the biggest mistake of Studico, because if you look at their territory, like, this is really good.
Yeah, I pointed it out early on. That's the spot I would be taking. But the issue is you've got to recognize, you know, obviously there was that power demand, but just the colony. You know, you've got to at least try to orient your HQ towards meeting that demand if it's New Seattle.
If this was me playing here, I would have found drawbacks on Racket's spots, and I would have gone into carbon and wind turbines, but it's just my favorite thing to do. I don't know if it's the best thing.
No, sometimes it
So
is,
lovely.
sometimes it isn't. Just depends on whether or not power is going to spike on like day 1 and you're going to make $80,000.
Yeah, so now it's just a matter of cleaning up, and there we go. So Sol 72130.
There's not too much to say on this one. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything that we haven't already covered, but just pretty open, pretty easy map to find places to found. Very difficult map to master, as we have seen.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you can see by the prices at the end of the game, it's just everything is nuts because the players aren't exactly managing it. And it's hard to manage when there's someone running away with the game.
Not in love with Scooby-Doo. I don't know if this was eventually just the AI saying, I don't know what else I can do. He somehow got a hold of a high silicon claim, despite high silicon being the only thing he has to his name, and he put an electrolysis reactor down on it, and he's got that other single wind turbine, and it's just... Those two things are so far apart, and they should be next to each other somewhere, doing something.
I think the silicon claim was probably AI weirdness of some sort.
That's so interesting. I guess keep his class on, which is the only thing that the AI could find to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this was a bit of a runaway game, but
I know
wasn't the most
this
exciting one to watch.
doesn't really need said, but I really like Swicoli's spot. I really like that he took time to make sure he got his silicon, and then he said, well, I can go anywhere I want, so I'm going to find aluminum, but I'm not just going to find aluminum. I'm going to make sure that I have great aluminum and great water. And it's like most nomads are decently happy if they can get their electronics at level 1, get some aluminum in, get some silicon in. If you can have a spot that actually promises you more than that, and you aren't just founding because everywhere else has been taken, you are in a dominant position to win the game, even before we start taking into account power. He's got carbon, there's nothing that he lacks, and that is a great spot to be in late game.
Exactly, because that definitely plays out to the strength of the nomads, which is just upgrading very quickly, having access to a lot of flexible options, and cruising into the late game and running away.
And in this case, I mean, as you pointed out, and I had no idea, New Seattle does not consume electronics, at least, yeah, no, not at all. And so basically you're doing a little bit better. It's usually not a huge deal, especially in a game like this, but just a little bit easier on those upgrades. Then you can see glass at double the price.
I believe electronics may have started double price as well, but I'm not so sure about that. And if
He got over the hump.
that isn't the case when everything goes up to like 300 plus
Yeah.
dollars, and electronics are still under 300, that means they were in a reasonably good spot. Well, there had been quite a bit of production for them. Anyway, it's going to be.
Get out of here.
Let's take a look at the leaderboard. I believe that is their first victory